If you haven't heard about Anchor and its easiest way to make a podcast, let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. What's up, mi gente? Welcome to the Rookie American podcast. I'm your girl, Lisette Carter. I missed you. I missed a week. I was actually traveling on my way home from Puerto Rico and had a nice solid months out there with Isabela and with my family. And Puerto Rico's intense right now, man, with the coronavirus stuff and everything else. It's just a lot. It's very intense. I ran the numbers when I was there. They have a 0.4% chance of getting the coronavirus and a 0.007% chance of actually dying from the coronavirus. And I mean, they've got it all out there. They've got the face shields, they've got the masks, they got the temperature checks every time you go into the mall, every time you go into every store within the mall. Um, They've got the beaches closed. They've got people, I mean, if you sneak off to the beach, they got people wearing masks at the beach. It's pretty intense out there. It's a little overwhelming. I was happy to come home and kind of see the looser restrictions out here. And you know what's interesting to me is that everybody knows the government of Puerto Rico is corrupt. Like it's been that way since forever, right? I mean, since I lived out there. It's always everybody knows it's corrupt. Everybody knows, I don't know if people know there, but the media is corrupt too. They have a one-sided liberal view of what's going on today. And obviously they're in cohorts with the government. And it's odd to me that people aren't questioning the government's restrictions. You know, they overthrew the governor last year with peaceful, I mean, the epitome of peaceful protest. People came together, they protested the governor for corruption, and they got him out of there. And so it's odd to me that people still don't question the people that are around that cabinet, the people that are in power there, as to what's really going on and what the real data is. And unfortunately, there isn't an independent journalist in Puerto Rico giving real, actual numbers. People are not asking questions, and unfortunately, it's disheartening to see everybody living in fear. I mean, if you're gonna die of anything right now, Puerto Rico, it's not the coronavirus. It's you're gonna be suffocated by the fact that you're wearing a mask and it's 100% humidity out there. But I mean, that's just my opinion. But came back to Massachusetts. I found out that they had a restriction, like not necessarily a travel ban, but if you weren't gonna take the test, the coronavirus test, and fill out some paperwork when you got here, they were gonna fine you $500 a day. I looked into that. I was like, we were kind of worried when we came back, but we got to the airport and nothing at all, nothing. And it's probably because Puerto Rico isn't considered a high risk state. I mean, it's not a state to begin with, but it's not a high risk territory. So I don't know, man. The fear is like out of control for the data that supports it. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm not. I don't really want to. The podcast is called Rookie American, and today's podcast is gonna be on the basics of U.S. government, and the reason why is because a lot of Americans don't fully grasp, how America works, how the government works, how politics work. And I wanted to give a basic summarization as to how we operate, how America operates. And honestly, look, I remember in high school, I went to high school in Puerto Rico. It was a bilingual Christian private school. There was nothing really Christian about it or the students. I mean, I include myself in that as well. But I had a really annoying history teacher by the name of Mr. Turner, and he was the son of the owner of the school. And he was a pain in my ass. To put it lightly, I honestly didn't care. I mean, the moment there was one semester when I had first gotten to Puerto Rico that I had gotten straight A's. I worked hard to do that, and my parents really didn't care. They were just kind of like, "All right, cool, like good, you got straight A's." And if I was like, if they don't care about me getting all honors this semester, why should I care about it myself? So from then on, I just kind of took like a lazy approach to high school. I did what I could to pass, but I wasn't really trying to get all A's again. And in that class, my teacher knew that. And he said to me, "Hey, Lisette," and he called me out in front of the entire class, and he said, "I bet Lisette can't even get an A on this next exam." And being the competitive person that I was, I said, "That's fine. Let's see." I studied, got an A plus plus, got 100 plus plus on that exam, and you know what? I don't remember a thing about it. It was a U.S. history class. I don't remember a thing about what I studied. And it goes to show that, you're just becoming professional memorizers. Obviously, it didn't last. I don't remember anything, but you're being professional temporary memorizers when it comes to school. I mean, what are you actually learning? And so it wasn't until I became older when I realized that, or when I had my daughter, that I realized, in a business, because you realize you learn about taxes, and where are these taxes going to? You learn about all that stuff, when you own a business, and then you start learning about the government. And then when you have kids, you're like, man, I gotta know what's going on in my town, in my district, in the states. I gotta know what's going on here because my daughter is about to grow up here. And so that's what made me interested in what was how America operated politically and government, via government. So when the inception of the United States happened, they had 13 states, I guess you could say, and they all had their own, back in the day, they had their own, each had their own currency, they had their own leaders. And they realized that this wasn't really going to work out. Okay, they didn't have any military defense individually, and they definitely didn't have any collectively. So they all came together, all of the leaders of those states, and they said, let's form a government outside of our individual governments to kind of oversee. We all have the same currency, that we all have the same military should there be any international threat, that we can easily go from one state to another without a problem. And let's have a set of rules, which where the inception of the Constitution and the US government came in. And so I'm going to be going over, and you know what? This might be boring to you, and that's totally fine. This is listen, send this to the people that that are interested in learning about the US government, that are interested in learning about the basics, because this stuff is going to be super important come November. Okay, you got to know our history. And so I'm going to be going over mostly the legislative branch. So the US government is broken down into three branches of government. Okay. You have the legislative branch, you have the executive branch, and you have the judicial branch. All right. The legislative branch is how all of, is basically Congress, how all of the inception of the laws, how they're written, and how they're passed. Okay. Then you have the executive branch, which is the president, basically, in his job. And then you have the judicial, which are the courts, Supreme Court, etc. And so I'm going to be emphasizing on the legislative branch, because even though you may think that you're insignificant in regards to what happens politically and in the government, that could be not that couldn't be farther from the truth. This actually affects us every single day. The bills and the laws that are passed are extremely important to not only your everyday life, but also it's going to be important to your children's everyday life as well. And so I'm going to be covering the basics of how the legislative branch works. All right. So they're actually separated. Congress is two different branches. Okay. You have your House of Representatives and you have your Senate. Your House of Representatives, all the members of Congress are a total of 535 members. Okay. 435 are in the U.S. House of Representatives, and 100 serve under the Senate. They all meet in the Capitol building to get their work done. Okay. Now, the House of Representatives are basically separated by district. So you'll see that about 700,000 people represent a district. Okay. So you'll see more states have more districts because they're larger in size. So, for example, Texas has 38 districts, they're a bigger state. Rhode Island has two House of Representatives. They have two districts because they're a smaller state. So you'll see that each state has either less or more representatives depending on the size of the state. Now the Senate has two senators per state. So obviously, if there's 50 states, there's 100 senators. Now there's also, in addition to that, there are also members, like non-voting members of the House of Representatives, such as like District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and four other territories. Now, the their roles, the House of Representatives, their role is to make the laws, impeach federal officials, and elect the president of the United States in case of an electoral college tie. Now, I'm going to get into how voting works, like popular vote, electoral vote, on another podcast. But they basically, the House of Representatives, they choose who the president's going to be in case there's a tie come election time. The qualifications for House of Representatives, you have to be 25 years old, you have to be a citizen for at least 7 years, and also be, at the time of the election, you have to be a resident of the state. So they collectively choose a speaker that passes the legislation supported by the majority party. So they determine when each bill reaches the floor. A bill is basically the inception of a law or policies. And also, they chair the majority party steering committee, which is basically a glorified term for managing or overseeing the progress of what's happening in the House of Representatives. They are, interestingly enough, the Speaker of the House is the one that um, is third in line of the succession of the presidency. So if something happens to Trump, something happens to Pence, then Nancy Pelosi would be president. Now, I have qualms with Nancy Pelosi, and the reason why is because there are this is like, I just gave you the criteria of what it is to be, what you need to have in order to be in the House of Representatives. But I believe there should be further, way more qualifications. Number one, there should definitely be a background check. Like you can't have any ties to any other countries. Like you can't have any kind of pending federal investigations stuff like that. And I remember when, and I know Hillary's, she was in Congress, but I remember when she ran for president and she was being federally investigated by the the FBI. She was under federal investigation, and my first thought was, how is this lady even, how can I even get a job at CVS if I'm being under federal investigation? Like, how could you even how is this okay that you could run for president and be under investigation? I don't understand. However, that's one of the things. They need to have an extensive background check, okay? The second thing is that you need to have, like I like to say, victories under your belt. Like, look at your district, and do you have um, solutions there? Like, do you have, what's the word? Um, do you have credibility there? Have you helped find jobs? Have you helped your district get out of debt? What did you do for the community? Like, you have to have results within within your community in order to run for House of Representatives or even Senate, right? So that's just me. The third thing is, I mean, this is just a normal thing, but you've got to have a term limit. And when your term limit, if you're going to be reelected, because for the House of Representatives, they're elected every 2 years, right? So every 2 years you can get reelected. For the Senate, it's every 6 years. So in my mind, I personally believe that if you're going to be reelected, then there has to be, okay, what did you accomplish in the last 2 years of the House of Rep? Because if you're going to be giving any input to what the country should be doing when it comes to bills or laws, then I want to know what you did in your own district to help. What did you do there? And right now, Nancy Pelosi's from California. California is a freaking mess. Like, honestly, like that's like a separate country right now. So if you look anything up don't look it up on Google, but on any other search engine like DuckDuckGo or any non-biased search engine, you can find a lot of information of what's really going on in California, and those representatives are not helping right now. But that's, I just went off on a tangent. The U.S. Senate, their duties, what they do is they approve treaties. Basically, they're like contracts from international contracts. They confirm cabinet secretaries, such as the Supreme Court justices and other federal officials. They choose the vice president should there be a tie. So they're the tying vote between two electors and the top two electors. They conduct trials of those impeached by the House, and they consider bills approved by the House of Representatives. So their qualifications, in addition to all the other stuff I just said, on paper, they have to be 30 years of age. They have to be a citizen of the United States for 9 years, and at the time of the election, be a resident of the state. Now, the Speaker of the Senate, or basically the President of the Senate, is the Vice President of the United States. So that would be Mike Pence. And so, this is why this is important for you to know, because you're like, well, what does this have to do with me? It has to do everything with you, because we are the ones that vote these people in. If you look at your paycheck and you see that there's a federal tax on there, this is the money that are lining these people's pockets and also going to the bills and the policies and all the other stuff that they support. So you've got to know, okay, is this what party is this representative from? Are they Democrat or Republican? I personally don't like to vote via party, because I think they're both two heads of the same snake. One is just bigger than the other, right? So I like to vote on policy. What policies do these individuals support? Number one, what are they, who's helping them? Where is the money that for their campaigns? Where is that money coming from? Because there's interest groups that say, hey, listen, let's say if you're pro-abortion or you're anti-abortion, right? You don't believe in abortion whatsoever, and a group comes in and says, "Hey, I'll give you $7 million for your campaign if you turn your vote into being pro-abortion." And then that's, is there integrity compromised when it comes to money? That's another thing that I like to look at. And a way to identify that is to see how they flipped or flopped throughout the years. How they changed their mind about an issue throughout the years. If they were pro anti-abortion one year and the next year they were pro-abortion, why? What group is supporting that? Did they change their mind because they saw, the glitter and gold of money? They were tempted by that. So you've got to look at that as well. Then this is significant. We the people, we choose these guys, and we choose who goes into office and who makes these laws. All right. So I'm going to break down also their salaries, because the Congress, they have a set amount of salaries. Like their salary is set, right? But then when you look at what they're worth, it's significantly more for some reason. Okay. And so the Speaker of the House makes $223,500, right? The House Majority and Minority Leaders makes $193,400. The House Senate members and delegates $174,000. That's a lot of money, right? But when you look at, if let's go back to the example of Nancy Pelosi. When you look at what she's worth millions and millions of dollars. And you've got to ask yourself, where did that money come from? That's a legitimate, honest questions. And those are questions that the media will not raise. And that's why I'm here, to help you ask questions. Now, the Congress is actually divided into a bunch of different committees, because you can imagine that the policies that they bring, whether they're like environmental or budget or ethics or financial services, homeland security, all that stuff, like banking, they have to separate all of their bills and policies into categories so that they can write them up. And so you can imagine how confusing it would be if they would just have, okay, guys, let's introduce this bill and let's talk about it and argue about it, and then let's come to a conclusion. and then let's write it up, and then let's pass it off to the president so he can sign it. But you've got to have like different categories that they would go under so that they know how to work at it. And so it allows the members to gain expertise on the specific issues of the bills that are introduced to them in Congress. And so there's a breakdown of them between like different committees in the House and different committees in the Senate. So they could be agriculture, education and labor, energy and commerce, foreign affairs, foreign relations, health, education and labor and pensions, judiciary, like all of this stuff, small business. They all have different categories where they work at these bills. And so you can actually find a list of these categories on congress.gov/committees. And so as the bills are passed, um, there are different rules to the bill. So, for example, if in order for a bill to pass legislation, they have to send it to the president to sign, which I just mentioned. And both the House and the Senate, they have to pass the majority they have to pass the same bill by majority vote. So the majority of the votes will get it. Will get the bill passed. So if the president vetoes, or basically it's a glorified term for constitutional right to reject a bill, he sends it back to Congress. They can override the veto by passing the bill again, with each chamber having at least 2/3 of each of the vote, if that makes any sense. So the Senate and the House have to have 2/3 majority vote in order for the bill to pass. There are instances where, however, a bill can be passed without the president's signature. So if, let's say, the president doesn't sign the bill and he doesn't sign it back to Congress within 10 days, the bill can become a law, right? Also, if Congress ends their session or like their meetings before the 10 days, then it doesn't become a law. So there's also something called the pocket veto, which is basically what I just described, where it stops the bill from becoming a law simply because the president kept it in his pocket and he didn't send it back to Congress. So there is a structure as to how the bills are passed, where it gets created, it goes to the committee, floor action, where they, go back and forth about the bill. They've all vote on it. It goes to conference committees and then the presidential action, and then it becomes a law. So this is basically how it's all, again, how it's all passed, from policy, from its inception to becoming a law. And this could take years on it. This isn't like, hey guys, I have an idea, let's write this up and let's pass it. This could take years for a bill to actually become a law. And it's important for you to understand, because your children are going to be growing up in if the rapture doesn't come, your children are going to be growing up with these laws. There are laws that are in place that you might not agree with. The laws right now that are being socially pushed by by the Democrat, and this isn't my opinion, these are facts. Like Joe Biden, by the Democratic Party, Kamala Harris, who was just nominated for VP, who I also have qualms with personally, but these are bills that are, they'll allow transgender like athletics to happen in school, where a boy will say he's a girl and then he'll compete and he'll win everything, which makes it unfair to women. Or, some of the laws that Obama passed about having transgender bathrooms, where, a man can go into a woman's bathroom, claim he's a woman. And this isn't always the case, but there have been reports and people that have been arrested over going in and raping kids, little girls, or locker rooms. That is why it's important to know what these people stand behind. Is the House of Representatives majority Democrat? Is it majority Republican? It's super important for you to know what is what and who is voting for what, because this is the future of your children that we're talking about here. And so I just wanted to quickly, I know it was a lot of information. I just wanted to keep it super, super basic. For those that don't know, if you know somebody maybe that is interested in learning about the basics of US government, shoot them over this podcast real quick. This election year right now in November is literally, and I know a lot of people don't take it seriously, but it is the deciding factor between America becoming a socialist communist nation and a free nation. And so you've got to understand why. It's not just about political memes, which are basically like posters and billboards of propaganda right now on social media. It's about, okay, what are the facts? What does this person believe in? Especially if you're a Christian, you've got to know, you've got to understand. Like, if you're reading your Bible, a lot of these policies do not line up with biblical stuff. They don't line up with scripture. It it's it's odd to me, to run into a Christian and them saying that they have Christian beliefs and they have accepted Jesus Christ into their Lord and as their Lord and Savior, but then the next day they go and vote for abortion. I don't understand. I don't understand that. Those are two different things. And so, um, I wanted to encourage you and tell you that it's not as hard and it's not as much information as you believe it to be. You can find the information, it's all accessible. You go online, figure out what these people's backgrounds are, who's paying them, what are they voting for, and you have the freedom to contact them too and be like, yo, I didn't vote for you to do this. Like, and there's a lot of people contacting Governor Baker and saying, hey, it's not okay for you to keep a Walmart open and have 300 people in there, but close my gym. This is not okay. I didn't vote for you to do this. And so there's actually an app. You can go on whitehouse.gov and find all of your representatives, but you can also find on or mass.gov or whatever your state is, but you can also download this app called We the People, where you can put in your zip code and you can find all of your local representatives and senators with their phone numbers, with their emails and their addresses, and you can put together, there's apps where you can put together petitions, or you can write a nice letter, because obviously nobody likes getting angry letters about how messed up you are. So, write a nice letter about, hey, listen, this is how my family is suffering, this is how my community is suffering. I didn't vote for you to do this. Like, this is not okay. And you have a voice, and you have to be adamant about going after these people and saying, this is not right, this is not right, this is not right. It doesn't take just one phone call. It takes a collective amount of people constantly, consistently contacting their reps and saying, this is not okay. You've got to push back on the things that you think that are wrong. Honestly, that's the way to do it. Ranting on social media does nothing. I do it because I think it's funny. Like, some of the things I think on there is funny, and also to educate people. But I don't go on there to argue with people about why they're wrong. No, you've got to go to your local government, or your state reps and say, hey, what's going on here? Let me contact you. You work for me. The taxes that come out of my check, it's because that's what you're paid with. So you work for me. It's not the other way around. I don't do what you tell me to do. That you need to vote the way that I voted you to vote. You know what I'm saying? So be aware, be knowledgeable. My next podcast is going to be on the two other branches: executive, judicial, and then maybe a couple of other things. Probably be released in the next couple days. But understand that you have the power. Do not feel like you need to be silenced because the majority doesn't want you to speak, doesn't want you to say anything. Go ahead, pick up the phone, write that letter, write that email, and get the job done. I'm actually releasing Rookie American before the election time, so that I can try and educate as many people, especially minorities, as possible when it comes to the subject. And I'm actually going to have a donation link, either on this podcast or the next podcast, so for people to donate for publishing and distribution, because I know a lot of people that want to support, and I want to make that available to them. So, hey guys, thank you so much. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you. Again, share, 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 share. Love you. Have an amazing Thursday. All right.